Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Shock Talk. And we're glad you could join us today, and we've got some great topics lined up for you, and I think Shane's got something on his mind he wants to start off with today.
Well, prior to you clapping in,
Yeah.
we always clap in.
We clap in, we tap out.
Yeah, that's it. That's how we start.
But anyways, I think that's to get sound levels or something. I don't know why we do that, Garrett. But we were talking about, okay, today's topic is overbuilding your vehicle, in particular with jewelry.
Oh, no.
So
this sounds like it could be good.
You know, and I think that covers...
and there's a lot of things in my mind that can be considered jewelry.
Well, in our case, it's very expensive racing bypass shocks on street legal vehicles.
Topic one.
Our big swing weight bumpers to put your 33 on.
Yeah, that could be jewelry.
Yeah.
But I want to start off with a story.
Or big bumpers to house a winch when people can do a hidden winch plate.
Yeah.
Or just let's go.
Shane's got that.
But instead of talking about what it is, let's talk about a little story that all of us dealt with recently on a trip. And it's the trail. I'd call it the Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
Oh,
Trail of
Tears.
Tears.
Oh, you're going to have to refresh my memory on
So without getting into exactly what it was, imagine you bought a brand new vehicle that might have cost $100,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you went and dropped it off at a fabricator.
Spent another $30,000 approximately.
Probably more. And that fabricator promised that he was going to do this, that, and the other thing. And imagine that you spent $100,000, you spent 30, 40 grand at a fabricator, and your brand new car is down there for a year.
Oh, they have it for
I'm going to tell you what.
And you can't drive it.
And to be fair, I think we have two situations like that, right? And both were prototypes, right? This was a prototype kit for this specific vehicle, and this other was a prototype kit for this specific vehicle. So clearly there wasn't enough time to properly digest the failures.
Yeah.
And then actually allowed the fabricator to address the concerns. They just built them.
Engineer on the fly.
Moved.
Engineer on the fly, which is usually not good.
So signing up for prototype kits.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get the
thing...
And
a lot of people like to do that, and I'm going to tell you why, because...
It's free.
Like we do, right. We do it too. We put vehicles out. Well, obviously, we don't do that, but we do... Hey, you want a set of free shocks? We need a test fit. Ours is a bit different. But when you get fabricators involved that are... free is not always free, because after free is done, now you're chasing down the free problems you just got, and now it's costing you money to unwind it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So Trail of Tears, you spent $100,000.
Your vehicle was there for a year.
You financed a prototype build.
Right.
And now your product, now you're $150,000.
Now you're finding all the flaws.
It doesn't work.
Now you take it off-road, now you're finding all the flaws.
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Maybe the thing actually doesn't even run anymore, right?
It's so over-modified it doesn't run.
Let's get out of the suspension. What about putting a gigantic motor in a Jeep JT?
Yeah.
Like a 6.4, and it's shorting out.
Yeah.
And now
your coil packs are touching your brake booster. Is that supposed to happen? I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Could be over-modified at that point, right?
Yeah. So, you need to turn the vehicle upside down to shake the battery out of it. Yeah.
Well, if
it's horseshoe, they horseshoe the battery in there.
Yeah.
Just relocate it, put it in the back. There's absolutely no one in the world that can get their hands around that battery to lift it out of the vehicle.
Was that actually a kit? Was that something that was built as a kit to be sold? Yeah. Okay.
So,
kit-ish.
Yeah, kit-ish.
There's lots of things out there that are jewelry, and you got to be careful of it.
And it's a shame to me because, first of all, Jeeps were never meant to go fast. Period. Can you make them fast? Absolutely. After 80 miles an hour, I don't care how fast your Jeep is, after 80 miles an hour, solid axle vehicles that are linked front and rear, that are on track bars front and rear, after 80, 90 miles an hour, that thing doesn't want to be at that speed.
Well, it's actually a brick going down the road. It's not aerodynamic.
Not only brick, it's like Any sudden movements at 90 miles an hour, cancel Christmas. Return your gifts, pal. You're not going to be there.
Return the gifts.
Exactly.
You're not going to be there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you got a Jeep with a 6.4, make sure you got like some sort of like
Insurance.
Some
Life
sort of
insurance?
Speed limiter?
some sort of like
Something that you tape under
at
the
least
gas
minimally
pedal so
get a
you can't
trust-
push it all the way
Get
down.
a trust dialed in for your family. Like it's just not. There's just things that are not meant to be fast. I mean, Jeeps are crawling vehicles. Again, you need to. Are they cool? Have I seen some cool fast Jeeps? Absolutely. But why do I want to go 0 to 90 miles an hour in 6 seconds, 5 seconds, and then after that, I'm not going to go any faster because the Jeep starts just falling, just doesn't.
It's not happy.
Yeah, it's not happy. It's a sad
it's not
face.
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, tire pressure is a big key with that because I have a jail and it will go 90, and I tell you.
Yeah, even the
not-
392s.
it's not happy.
Even the 392s
The white
from
knuckle.
the factory. I mean,
Yeah.
we got to remember they're building these from the factory,
Right.
Like this, with Dana 44 axles.
All right,
It's like-
so yeah, that's
so-
what I was just gonna say. They built it from the factory, and that's probably gonna handle the best. Like my Jeep with our 1.5 lift kit.
I still think it's very underbuilt. They offer Mopar 60s, but they still build these 392s with a Dana 44.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, so how many of these 6.4 Jeeps are on stock suspension?
Quite a few.
The ones that Jeep
Oh, you're talking
builds?
392?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
talking about after?
No, not the
after
Demon
the fact.
Jeeps.
Yeah.
Not the Demon Jeeps. The Demon Jeeps aren't on.
Well, let's talk about those. So you got a Demon Jeep. What type of suspensions underneath that?
What does the
some
kit
sort of-
come
some
with?
sort of
Yeah.
coilover conversion or Terraflex long arm or
Exactly.
no disrespect to any coilover manufacturer that's on there or Terraflex or Rubicon or whoever's on there, doesn't matter. Those were not horsepower rated; those were crawling rated or off-road
Yeah, it's a
tested.
crawl
None of
kit,
that
yeah.
is
So now it's
like
worse.
there's no anti-squat worked out in the spring or the valving and the rear shocks. There's none of that. So you jump into these demon cars, the rear end drops down, your pinion angle changes, starts binding.
Blow the
lightly,
drive line out of it.
and it's
And you got a car capable of over 100 miles an hour.
Right.
Why did you need that?
But what size are the tires?
I mean, it's got to be. I mean, it's got to be pretty rewarding though.
So is
to
an
go buy a
off-road
sports
tire
car.
rated to go 100 miles an hour?
No.
No. It's going to come apart at some point.
Yeah, I think
I don't think
they'll-
it'll come
they'll-
apart.
I don't think it'll
it'll
come apart.
But I think that
They're not happy
the
at
reason why there's reinforced sidewalls on a 295 35 21 is because at speed they don't want that sidewall to flex. So you do an emergency maneuver, that sidewall's not flexing.
Stays, yeah.
Now you do that on a 42-inch BFG mud terrain, that
gonna
thing's
flex.
gonna flex.
Yeah.
So when you do your emergency maneuver at 90 miles an hour because you just missed your exit, chances are you're laying it on its side.
Yeah, the tread's going to stick to the road and the sidewall's going to stretch out on.
And I don't see any manufacturer, I don't think we as a shock manufacturer, I don't think Terraflex as a suspension manufacturer, or anyone is going to do a spring rate or a kit that's specifically for a Demon Jeep. There's just not enough of them out there.
Right.
But they should have a heavier spring rate in the rear. There should be some anti-squat worked out in the valving. There should be a heavier spring rate in the front. Like the thing needs, it's just like this. You see back in the day, all the 22RE, back in the day, 22RE two-wheel drive pickups with long travel kits on them. And they had the Rally 4000 HIDs. Your car's not fast enough for those lights, buddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like your car's not fast enough for the lights. So just get a Rally 4000 compact halogen. I promise you it's going to work.
Casey
you don't
highlights.
You don't need the Rally 4000 HID because your car's not fast enough for the light. Vice versa. Then you get the guy that has LS swapped Toyota pickup that has halogen lamps. It's like your car's too fast for these lamps, dude. Like, what are you doing? It's people don't realize that. People do realize, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they don't realize. Like build your car to what your desired use is. If your suspension isn't fast enough for the light, don't put the light. If your suspension's too fast for that light, upgrade your light.
Yeah, you have to stay within the realm of the
You know
use
what
of
I
the
mean?
vehicle.
It's like this goes back to when we talked, when I said I never in my life thought I'd see a long travel kit with an ARB bumper. Like those just didn't blend.
Yeah. Heavy bumpers and
tons of travel.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I feel like we're in like a warp zone.
A state of flux right now.
In fact, I saw one the other day in my neighborhood. I was walking my dog, and there was a guy, 4th generation 4Runner long travel kit, and he had some just big, gnarly bumper on there. And I'm like, you're blowing through your compression travel. Like, if you use that thing, and not only that, you get that thing motivated, moving fast through a whoop section, you're tearing up the frame. Like that bumper's trying to release itself off the frame.
Yeah.
Like I know what the idea is, but to me it's overkill. If you're going to trail ride your 4th generation 4Runner, there's no need to go long travel with a big heavy bumper on it. It's going to be what the gains on trail riding are going to be minimal. You're going slow. So yeah, can you get more travel out of a long travel kit? More articulation? Yes. But is it worth that additional money?
Money.
Well, let's talk about 4Runner. Is the frame on the front of a 4Runner designed for a 200-pound bumper? And winch?
That's what he was just saying. It's going to try to escape as soon as you put it on.
When you put a bumper, now maybe a lot of people don't know this, but we obviously work in the industry. We get to drive lots of cars over the years. We learn things. We've ruined them. We've modified cars to the market. But on Toyotas, when you have a big, one thing I've noticed when we've ever put or been in a car with one of those big like brush guard bumpers is that where you can see it over the hood is that the whole time that 200-pound bumper and winch, the bumper itself, just basically shakes.
Yeah, it looks like it's trying to get away.
You can watch it shaking.
Even if you just are in washboard. Like, so guys that are wheeling out there that says, I have long travel because it articulates better, and I have my bumper because it houses my winch and my lights, and I strap my high lift on it that I'll never use, and then I also have like my showers in there and my air chucks in there for airing. I'm like, great. But people don't even realize, even air down, when you're traveling through washboard roads, that bumper is kissing the fenders.
It's moving.
It's making contact. It's like the frame is ice. The body is on there, and it's isolated with rubber grommets. You know what I mean? It's going to kiss the fenders. It's going to start knocking your paint off.
Well, it was never designed to have something that heavy mounted there.
No, I mean, those big winch bumpers are made for Australia, man.
Right.
Well, happy face, sad face. You put on a 200-pound bull bar, right? And now you're watching the thing vibrate every time you drive down the road. Mm-hmm. And then if you hit a bump, it vibrates more, and this comes back to suspension NVH. You feel it.
You
feel the dynamics of that thing rattling and moving around. It actually shakes the car.
And then now here's even the worst part is if you suspend the vehicle correctly for that unsprung weight, now your daily commute, you're driving a tow truck, dude.
Yeah.
Like if you suspend it correctly for all that weight, it's very, very difficult for it to be compliant.
Yeah.
To be a daily driver.
So I've always told people the hardest thing to do is make a dual purpose rig. You can't make a daily driver a crawler.
We've said that at least 50 times on this show already. You
can't make a daily driver a overlander. Like if you're going to have an overland rig, build the rig, get a Prius to get to work.
And get a trailer to haul it to the trails.
Because I definitely am over the calls about trying to make your 9,000-pound GX 470 compliant. It's not going to ever be.
Yeah.
Because to suspend it correctly, that you're sacrificing compliance.
Yeah, it's
not to mention you're driving around looking at this bumper vibrating.
Exactly.
I mean,
might as well get a Prius for going to work, right?
All right.
Ask my shoes.
Yeah.
If you have a 4Runner or a GX, just get a hidden winch, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Why not?
A hidden winch.
Yeah.
Why not? The chances of you using that winch is very, very. The likelihood of you using it to help someone out versus you being stuck is more likely than you using it. Right. I mean, think about it. Our deserts, where would you even hook a winch to? If you're out there solo.
Only another vehicle is probably the only
place. If
you're
you're out there solo, that winch is useless.
Yeah. Unless
Unless you want to carry that gigantic fork that you bury in the sand that will cut your head off if it goes astray in your cab.
Yeah.
The pull towel.
Yeah. Pull pal. Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's like, if you really need a winch, do a hidden winch. But you know what I have noticed, me and you have talked about this quite a bit, is people are shedding the weight, man. Like, you go to Villamont Marketplace or all these little, marketplaces on Facebook, everyone's selling their bumpers and their winches and their roof racks, and
even the rooftop tents are starting to disappear. Things like that.
I think it's just the market's slowing down on that overland thing, which I'm glad, because I think maybe 10% of the 100% of overland builds are actually going overlanding.
Here we are back at overlanding again.
Yeah, somehow we got back here again. I don't know.
What was I going to say? I was going to say that, okay, yeah, Forerunner. You need a winch, right? Like, let's be seriously, Forerunner folks. Let's get serious. How much trouble are you? Where are you?
How much? You got an IFS vehicle with 9 inches of wheel travel. You've just consumed a few inches with your lift kit. So you now you've gained up travel, but now you have no droop, so your tire's not going to touch the ground. What can you possibly get yourself into to need a winch?
Precisely.
And if you are getting yourself into a situation where you need a winch, you bought the wrong car.
Exactly. So yeah, if you are planning on getting into situations that need a winch, a Forerunner probably isn't what you want.
Right. Probably should be looking at a Jeep.
Yes.
It'd
be a lot. Hey, I did it.
Yeah.
I had a not even a Jeep, but you can get yourself like a Dodge Ram, like a 94 to 01 half ton. Solid axle coil sprung. You know what I mean? You can get yourself.
You mean like the one we saw on the way to KOH every morning?
The regular cab?
Yeah.
You see that one sitting there for sale for $1,500?
Yeah.
She was a gem.
Yeah.
She was a gem.
That one.
She was lifted so high, she went from like 134-inch wheelbase to 94.
Well, I have to go back on the point about the winch a little bit and say, for listeners that live in areas where they're in inclement weather, that have a Forerunner where they might have to travel on ice and snow, those guys might have a winch that serves a purpose, right?
But why not make it a hidden winch behind the plastic facing?
Correct. The hidden winch would work just as well, but on an icy day, you end up in the ditch and you got to get yourself pulled out. That's what tow trucks are for as well.
This is again, something I've touched on in the past.
Let's touch on it.
I've had guys come in and drop their keys off with me and say, I want the nicest long arm kit you guys make. I want an nth degree long arm kit. I want 35s. And I'm like, dude, you have a Dana 35 and a Dana 30. What are you gonna do about that? I just want
back to the axles.
I'll tell you, there's many times where people would upgrade the axles first and outwheel a long arm kit all day long because they have traction.
Yeah.
So a guy with a Forerunner, I would tell him, don't put shocks and level this thing and put 33s. Get yourself a nice aggressive tire, 265, 70, 17, stock size.
And good axles.
And get yourself a locker for the rear.
Yep.
And like an E-locker. And get yourself some sort of E-locker for the front.
But you know what?
That can be undone.
You know what? You can't see any of that at Cars and Coffee, though, so why would you do that?
That's what's so backwards about this industry.
The E-lockers are hidden.
Yeah,
just a switch.
Part of it, it's really like a lot of the looks.
It's all aesthetics.
Well, that's what I wanted to say earlier. And
then a guy told me one time I was coming out. I forget where I was. I might have been in Virginia, and I was coming out of a coffee shop, and I saw his vehicle. He's like, "Yeah, she's got an 8-point. She's got an axle out of a GX 460." I'm like, cool. So what?
Why was that any better than the axle you
took
out?
It's still a stock axle.
Exactly.
And you got 35s on it. What do you think that's going to do? That was money not well spent, sir.
That swap didn't work.
Yeah, you just go right back into Starbucks and order you something.
Went from worse to worse.
Yeah.
Your up travel limit stop is the tire hitting the
tire blowing your fender off.
The inner fender tearing,
slicing it.
Out.
Yeah. Don't worry about bump stops. Your tire is going to do just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, those little slice marks, that's just the sheet metal.
You'll just have to replace your
self-clearance. That's
self-clearancing.
Yeah. That's self-clearancing.
And how do we know that? Because we've done it.
Yeah, we've done it plenty of times.
The engineers, so when we did 8112s about that Tacoma, the engineers 33s do not fit
We made them fit.
Because because they rub the sheet metal.
Right.
I'm like,
and then I even told Brandon, I'm like, these upper arms will punch the inner fender liners out of this thing. And he's like, oh, no way, because it's going to stop here. And I'm like, dude.
Next day, the inner fender liners were gone. Yeah.
I've never had a Tacoma before. I'm like, I don't care if it doesn't fit. That's what everyone runs. That's what we're going to do. And it was like, and all this shit was going on.
And our tires have little cut
and
marks.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy because it's like, people that commit to large tires are always the ones that are committing to higher end suspensions. I got a King package. I got a secondary hoop with a bypass. And I got 35s. Great. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like even our 8112, you put an 8112, you put a 33. If you put a good performance suspension kit on your vehicle, the way I know you're using it is you have almost a stock size tire, like a 275 70.
Right.
I think you're probably using it. Even with a 285 7017, it's going to cycle into the inner fender liners.
It is.
Yeah.
So if you have a shock package that you can actually take and
use.
feed on,
Yeah.
you're not using it with 33s. Definitely not with 35s.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you did, we would notice that your fenders would be gone.
So what we're saying is if you're going to get 35s, just get 5100s. Because that's all you need because you're going to blow your fenders off.
The fenderless generation.
Or you got to take a Sawzall out, Dremel everything out, make clearance, and
get artistic with
get
metal
Zeus
shaping.
tabs and try to get Zeus tabs and try to fasten your fenders.
Fiberglass fenders, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, not worth it.
So I want to get into like the Jeep side of this. So
the Jeep side of over modified.
Yeah, because I mean, I've gone to Moab, all these Teradol Sol back in the day. All the Jeep events.
The notches, yeah.
So we just got back from KOH. So I saw a lot of different vehicles with this situation. So
garage build.
I mean, not even like
Yucca Valley builds.
Yeah.
So it seems like with a Jeep, Cherokee, any of those kind of crawling rigs or whatever, they want to have tons of droop, right? So they end up like putting a shock on that has like 2 inches of up travel, maybe 3.
Mm-hmm.
And people always walk in, stumble into the booth. They're like, my shock is leaky. or better yet, my shock, it doesn't work good. It my suspension bottoms out. Bottoms out hard.
It's 3 inches, 4 inches too long.
And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go and where is it parked? I'm going to go look at it. So you go on out there and they got their Cherokee cut up. Fenders are cut up, 35s on it, whatever. And I look underneath the car, and he's got 2 inches of up travel with a 5100, 5125.
And 6
no
inches,
bump stop.
6 inches between the bump stop and the axle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, you only have 2 inches of up travel here, and you have 6 inches of up travel to your bump stop. And they look at you like you're like they're like some kind of a dead deer, then they've just died.
Yeah.
It's like some blank stare. It's like, they look at you with a blank stare.
You're from outer space.
And then you get the ones that will have 2 inches of shaft showing, and they've done the appropriate thing by moving the bump stop down.
But they're sitting on it.
But now they've just eliminated all their up travel, and they wonder why they're
sitting
like,
on the bump stop.
it's bottoming out.
Yeah.
Why is it bottoming out? Your shocks are not, it's bottoming out.
Again, this goes back to being a purpose-built vehicle. You can't build a dual-purpose rig. If you're going to put 3 of your friends in a cooler in the back, don't have 2 inches of piston rod showing.
Yeah.
Right?
Good.
Because you're going to have 0 when your friends in your cooler's back there.
Yeah. Yep.
So the hardest thing is to build a dual-purpose rig, man. Like if you have a Samurai with Toyota axles in it and your bumps are set up correct and you have 2 inches of piston rod showing, great. If all that thing does is see the rocks, great. Probably works fine. But if you're going to put your friends in the back and they're going to have their arms swinging out at KOH and going through a whoop section, chances are you're going to crash.
And then you come crying to people about how it's bottoming out.
Yeah, that's
you destroyed your car.
Yeah.
No, not destroyed it. I mean, obviously it's a Samurai.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a whole lot to destroy there, right? You're having a good time with that thing. But as a public service announcement, when you're setting up a rock crawling vehicle, you usually want to sit halfway.
About
Halfway.
midway in its travel.
Midway in its travel.
Yep.
So if you have 10 inches of travel, you'd like to have 5 inches of up
Yep.
and 5 inches of down.
Yep.
You don't want to have 2 inches of up and 10
Especially
inches of
because
down.
most of those setups are kind of a more to 1-to-1 motion ratio. I know it doesn't take into consideration how the axle pivots. You know what I mean? You could be compressing it a 1/4 inch over here, but dumping it down 6 inches here. I mean, it's there's a ratio to it. So,
But it's also a dynamic.
You can also favor the longer shock if what you're doing is crawling. You can
Just
also
crawling.
favor the shorter shock
Yeah.
if you want to do high speed, but you can't get the best of both worlds.
Like if you are, let's say, from Kentucky.
Here's the best of both worlds.
Oh, no.
Here's the best of both worlds. Link it and coil over it. But you can't have a standalone spring, whether it's leaf or coil, and try to set it up for both.
But they do the same thing with the coilovers.
Yeah, they do.
And we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, let's say you're at KOH and you're from Kentucky. So there's not a whole lot of off-road. You go to an off-road park. So you've got this Samurai, and you've got 2 inches of up travel, and you put it behind your Ram, and you tow it to the off-road park, and you unload it, and you go straight into the rocks.
Perfect.
Right.
Great. And now you just towed that Samurai all the way out to KOH, Johnson Valley.
Right.
And now you've got to drive through the desert to go get to Turkey Claw, right? And you're getting the crap pounded out of you because you've got 2 inches of up travel.
And now you're moving at speed over 6 foot tall.
Trying to.
Yeah.
And then you come crying to us that your shock's bottoming out or your suspension's bottoming out because they don't realize they don't have any up travel.
Right. Right.
So,
it worked great in the rock park because the speed was low, right? And the actual movement was all droop.
I would dare to say that it would still work better set up properly in mid-travel because with like especially
so many people don't properly set up shock travel to bump to droop.
No, they don't. They don't at all.
It's like such an easy task. I mean, I've seen some really nice builds out there, and then I look and I'm like, oh wow, he just stopped thinking, like right there. Like the whole build is nice, and then you completely brain farted on.
You didn't bump your shocks out properly, and that's another thing. Like that's probably the biggest killer of a shock is bottoming it out.
Yeah,
constantly. I mean, they could take a little bit of bottoming, but once you start bottoming those things consistently, I mean, cancel Christmas.
Cancel Christmas.
The shock is done.
But some people do it right.
And you notice that, another fun fact is it's always the shock's fault.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you, a problem is when people piece their suspensions together.
Right.
That's when they forget to get the bump stop extension.
Right.
Like on a Jeep.
But I was just going to say some people do it right too because, after being at King of the Hammers, had a few people come up that were using our product and they said, well, I'd like a little bit of help on tuning my shocks. And our shock tuners were there and they were working the race cars and helping customers tuning shocks. And they said, well, the first thing we got to do is make sure that your travel is set right. Your ride height is set right. Is the piston rod in the right place? If that's not proper, I can't tune your shocks. And a couple of times the tuners came back and said, I can actually tune on this car because it's sitting in the travel zone. It's actually in the right spot. And they went out with the customers and came back, and the customers had these huge smiles on their faces simply because they either took the advice of Junior when he sold them the shocks and put them on their car and got the right lengths, and the fact that the tuner was able to tune the shock in the ride zone like it was built to do.
And when you're prepping, like let's get it right. When you're prepping and you're balls to the wall trying to get this car ready for this race, often things are overlooked because you're in a rush.
Right.
You know what I mean? So having second pair of eyes on it.
Yep.
Is always beneficial. To me, when someone comes up to me and says, my shock is too stiff, first thing I think of is something's binding in the suspension.
Right.
Because a shock
or the spring rate.
A shock shouldn't ever be that stiff.
Yeah.
Even if it's heavy valved, it's going to travel. Like if you're telling me that it's so maybe the shackle's getting hung up on something. Maybe it's not pivoting. Maybe the shackle hardware is too tight. Maybe
binding in the suspension.
I don't know how many times people are have a deaver pack or something. They're like, oh, the back doesn't move. It's too stiff. Well, why don't you? And I don't know how many times I'm loosen those bolts.
The shackle bolt, yeah.
And then tighten them to spec, and it's fine.
Yeah, they hit it with an impact. Or they'll put the hardware in backwards.
And it's hanging.
The hardware comes against the frame.
Yeah, it hangs. Yep.
And then when it tries to pivot, the hardware is bottoming out on the frame.
Yep.
I've had people loosen bolts, and the suspension dropped 1 to 2 inches.
100%.
Well, that's something too.
On a
I
leaf
mean,
spring.
in all of our installation guides, it's telling people don't torque suspension bolts until you're final assembled on the ground.
But even
ready
final
to go.
assembly on the ground, if you're hitting that thing with an impact
No,
gun,
I mean, you still need to be at.
yeah, if you're hitting that
directed
thing
torque.
with an impact gun, it's like
Yeah.
you're not.
You just compress the metal mounts onto the sleeves and nothing's going to move.
So I want to like move in, keep on the Jeep topic, and I want to move into like one of the reasons why I wanted to hit this topic. So jewelry, expensive shocks on Jeeps,
Right.
and crawlers and all that. A lot of people don't and setting up your suspension right. So I see that a lot at these trail things, but people don't know that an off-road racing shock, a bypass shock, they have a lot of dead length in them compared to like a 5125 or 7100 or something like that. So in particular, if you're trying to put a 9200 like on a Jeep JL that has, you can't really mount it up into the engine compartment. You have to mount it below the fender skirt. Like those shocks, I don't care what brand it is, have tons and tons of dead length.
Right.
That's going to inhibit your up travel.
So explain dead length. Does
Dead
that
length
mean that
means-
the body is longer than the rod is longer than the body?
That means like dead length means the efficiency of the travel versus how long the body is.
Right.
So if you take a 5125 or 7100, those are very efficient. We use a warm form tube, and the piston could go especially 7100 can go all the way up into the inside of a tube.
Right.
So in off-road racing shocks, they usually have a tube is separate from the cap. The cap screws on to the tube.
And that's starting to create dead length.
Because you've got threads
Right. That the piston
take
can't
up
pass
room.
over. Right.
And then the purpose of an off-road racing shock is for off-road racing, right? So you need to have a very supportive rod guide that goes deep into the...
Which also takes up space. Mhm.
So a rod guide on a 7100 or 5125 is maybe, what, a half inch deep?
Yeah, 3/4 of an inch, yeah.
You take a 9200 and you're looking at
2 or
like
3 inches.
2.5 inches of
Yeah.
rod guide. And what that does on a racing vehicle is it supports the piston rod.
Right, lateral
so
support.
that it doesn't want to bend, right?
at full extension.
At full extension. Obviously on a Jeep, you don't need that.
Right.
On a Pro 2,
Yeah.
you need that.
Right.
9200s are designed for Pro 2s and Pro 4s or a desert racing car. They're not really specific. We're not taking into account, and those are custom mounted chassis. They don't really lend themselves very well to fit in the wheel well of a Jeep JL or JK, right?
Right, and that's not the purpose the product was made for.
Exactly. So you end up putting these things on, and even like a coilover. There's all these like coilover kits that aren't up into the engine compartment. They're below in the wheel well. You're basically putting on a shock that has tons of dead length.
And less travel than what you would have had if you just got the coil and shock.
Exactly.
Or if you used a 5100
Precisely.
or 700, yeah.
Less travel.
Yeah.
A lot less. So you spent all this time, effort, money to put this jewelry on your car, and you're achieving way less travel than if you just had a 5100 series.
Back to it doesn't work.
I mean, it works clearly because they've been doing it since the double throwdown kits have been around.
Right.
So it works, but it works on like low velocity washboard. But when you're not going to see one of those Jeeps going through its whole travel because then
Right.
it stops working.
Well, and of course, as Shane was explaining, the product isn't designed for that use. With all that dead length, you're never going to be able to get it's going to bottom out.
I mean, if we're being honest,
No,
chances are the people that are putting that kind of money into their Jeep ain't going to use it to that anyway.
It is
It's
designed
more-
for that use, but it's more of a tube chassis, like say like
Correct.
Genrite has like a whole chassis.
Right. Purpose
you know
built
what
to
I mean?
give that shock space to mount and
Like
and
you
all that sort of
need
stuff.
if you're doing coilovers, you need to be going into the engine bay,
You're right.
and moving stuff out
You
of the
need
way.
that space.
Yeah, and super high shaft velocity. I'm not sure that you're not going to have other interferences. Like, have you, like diff contact to the oil pan or
Yeah,
control
there's
arm
all of
contact
that,
to the chassis? Like,
yeah.
these are all on tube chassis cars. You know what I mean? Where the links aren't going to bind. There's going to be nothing that it's going to. Well, you're still got a engine there
Cycle
with
it,
a
yeah.
transmission pan,
Yeah.
and the links are going right by it.
Yeah.
It's like
Yep.
it's still a production vehicle with, I guess, tasteful mods.
Yeah. Still got to check
Tasteful
all
looking
that.
mods.
Yeah,
Tasteful
tasteful looking.
And truthfully, I would challenge someone to take a JK with our bypass.
Yeah.
With a 3-inch progressive spring, 3.5-inch progressive spring. The same links as whatever your double throwdown kit is on.
Because the travel, isn't affected by this because you've got drive.
Right. So now you got a 2-tube bypass in the stock location with a 3.5-inch progressive spring and some sort of long arm kit. I don't care whose long arm kit.
What if it
Against the
was
same JK that has the same long arm kit, but a double throwdown kit, bypass coilover front, coilover rear.
we probably shouldn't say double throwdown. There's like a lot of these out there.
They're still considered double throwdown to me.
Are they? Are
Yeah.
they?
I mean, when you have
I thought double throwdown was a specific brand.
yeah, that's Rebel.
Let's just say coilover bypass.
Coilover bypass front
Yeah.
with a exterior bump stop
And usually they're
coilover rear
welded.
with a bump.
That
yeah.
exterior bump stop is usually, that's in the stock coil bucket.
Yeah.
And then it's like on some kind of a welded, lowered thing down.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like lowered way
It
down.
has to be
Okay,
dropped
yeah.
down. Yep.
So I would
So the
challenge,
coil bucket's still there.
right. So I would challenge. I would honestly put a high dollar figure that a bolt-on bypass 8100 with a nice progressive spring
Long arm.
would probably do better through a long section.
Yeah. Properly engineered, thought out, tested. Yeah.
I mean, you could
Not
throw,
to mention frame flex.
yeah, you could throw all you want, but none of that stuff was meant for that vehicle.
Yeah.
Well,
And
not,
like we've talked about this before, you get it all on there. Who's tuned it? It's still, most of them all still have the default valving profile that King or Fox or we put into it. It's all still that damping profile.
Well, that
So-
was what I was saying
That's a
earlier.
lot.
Is
Yeah.
even properly engineered. The shocks were properly fit. All the suspension was dialed in as best it could. Simply the bypass tubes weren't tuned yet, right? They came out of the box and got bolted on the car. And the difference was night and day between one of our ride engineers tuning the bypass tubes versus the way it came out of the box. It's just the customer came in
But
with
still
sad
not right.
face. Yeah.
Still
and
not right.
He left with happy face because someone that knew how to tune bypass tubes had worked
still not right.
on the car.
but
Because now you got probably softer springs. Like typically your ride zone rate on a dual spring like that's going to be maybe 111 pounds. Factory's about 180,
140,
190.
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So now you got a softer rate.
way softer.
And we tune for the soft rate because it's a 1-to-1 motion ratio.
Right.
So what's typically a long arm valving, like a 140/40? Now you got two shocks in there that are valved 380/110, and then you got your coilover that's 250/100. It's still not right. You turn the tubes all you want. Tone it
No,
down
I
all
wasn't
you want.
talking about the double throwdown modification. I'm talking about
Just
a system with a bypass shock that's been engineered to run that
Right.
shock.
Yeah.
And then you still have to tune the bypass.
Oh, yeah,
tubes.
yeah,
yeah.
Big problem on the coilover bypass on the, or just a coilover. That's a huge problem. You have 180 pounds pushing out the axle. Now you got 110 pounds. You don't have, typically the rebound control in the shock is so much that the axle won't even come out.
Yeah.
So you end up packing.
Sticking up.
Yeah.
So then you end up having to take all the control, all the rebound control out to get that axle to start moving.
Yeah.
And then it's just like super unstable.
So the goal of a bypass shock and a coilover is you are going to find your right compliance in the ride. Whatever you're putting it on a trophy truck, you're putting it on a class 1 car, whatever you're putting it on, you have every opportunity to find your perfect.
The comfort zone, yeah.
You're not going to do that in a production car. You're just not.
There's just not enough space.
And getting to the up travel, like typically all these things have about 3 inches of up travel. Right? And then you get back to the thing's bottoming out.
Right.
I'm trying to drive to Chocolate Thunder. And what's between Hammertown and Chocolate Thunder? 1,000 freaking giant whoops. And you're bottoming out on every one of them.
And for God's sake, you don't want to go slow with that jewelry on there.
No.
Hell no.
No. You'd get run over by the Honda Celica or the Toyota Celica that's behind you trying to go faster because he's got stock suspension.
Or the Oldsmobile Bravado with the 4.3 liter in the transfer case and 3.5 inches of wheel travel, just getting it.
Yeah.
Let's put into perspective.
So what again, what I don't understand is you're going to put all this jewelry on your car. You're going to spend for like a double throwdown kit with bumps and everything. And then by the time you put the 40s on there and your beadlock wheels and your fenders to try to keep the 40 from hitting things.
And the year in the shop,
so
that
you're
you
probably,
can't drive
you're
it.
probably 20,000, 25,000 deep in jewelry, right? Why not just spend the $3,500 to take it out to the desert and have a tuner get after it? You're 20, 25K deep into this. Why stop there?
Yeah.
But when's the last time you've seen a post of a production JT or JK or JL in the desert getting tuned?
I've never seen one.
Never have I seen a
one.
post
No.
of a double throwdown kit out in the desert getting tuned, because they just deal with it. And the problem is, you get in it, the jewelry makes you feel like a king. So that feeling of a king, I got all this jewelry in these 40s. This is how it's supposed to run. No, dummy, it's not.
Yeah.
Right? It can ride so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Our 8100 bypasses are tuned in the desert.
those things.
By
are
the way.
ripped.
Yeah, I did see some of the video on that. It was
And all that
good.
all that rod force getting put, like, we haven't even talked about that.
Rod force.
Imagine having to tune out all that rod force in the front of that. Like, they're all 7/8 shafts or bigger. You know what I mean? Some of them are 1-inch piston rods I've been seeing on some of these bypasses now. So you got a ton of rod force that it's not needed. So you got to tune that out.
So your 110-pound spring, once you put a bypass, now you need about a 80-pound combined.
Yeah, because of the
With your 3
Because you're
inches of
fighting
up
rod
travel.
force.
yeah.
So now you got 3 inches of
Yeah.
up travel with an 80-pound combined.
So you try to fight the rod force on the compression side while it's trying to push the axle away from the vehicle.
Yep. Yeah, there's
It's
so
just-
many things, and we've come to this conclusion before that if you don't factor in all these things, you're gonna not have the ride that you were looking for when you spent all that money.
I tell you what, if I was doing, like, I love the idea of putting coilovers and bypasses on a trail rig. Like, what is that, a 4500 King of the Hammers type vehicle? I love it.
Or a Kia Mojave, whatever you want.
Like if you go down to like Jimmy's 4x4 and you say, I want a coilover bypass.
By the way, this is a good time to congratulate
Yeah.
Kade Rod.
Yes.
Woo!
What a
Kade Rod.
race.
What a God.
Every time I look at Instagram, there's Kade Rod. Someone's reposting.
Yeah, that
Jumping down back door.
That was amazing.
Randy, Kade, you guys did a killer job out there, man.
Awesome.
Qualifying was unreal.
Yeah, 30 seconds faster than
I
anyone
mean,
else.
To be hung up for over an hour.
Oh, I was watching that.
To be
I felt
hung
like
up
I
for
was
over an hour and still come
In
10th
in,
place.
you know,
10th
the
place
top
out
10.
of 117. Yeah.
That tells me, had he not got hung up, he would have been chasing first.
Yeah.
He would have been somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
But you can drop off your... Actually,
And let's Doug Matag, man. He was
Doug
he was
Matag.
blistering fast out there.
Yes. Yes.
He had a motor failure, but blistering fast.
Yeah. We had a bunch of other racers out there as well.
But
So.
actually, you don't drop off a car at Jimmy's 4x4. You say, hey, I want coilover and bypass, and they build you a purpose-built chassis.
Right.
For that.
And,
For what you're
it,
gonna do.
and it probably sits in the middle of its travel.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's badass.
Yeah.
So I would say...
Well, it's cycled, so it doesn't always have to sit in the middle of its travel. If you're building a center-mounted
Yeah,
AM car,
exactly.
kind of like Kade Rods, I mean, you're going to want to...
I'm talking about solid axle.
Right, yeah, solid axle.
Solid axle. We're still on Jeeps.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how you do it. If you want
Like a
coilover-
bomber chassis.
Yeah.
like a bomber chassis. If you want coilovers and bypasses and you want to go fast and you want to rock crawl, get a bomber chassis.
Yeah.
Go to Genrite and have them build you a Jeep looking thing that's like tube chassis.
Like the one
Right.
Perkins co-drives with.
Exactly.
Yep.
Go to Jimmy's 4x4. You're not dropping anything off because they're starting from scratch.
Yeah, exactly.
But-
and that's the only way you could do it right.
You are dropping something off. That's
Yeah.
your
your wallet. Yeah. Your monies.
Yeah.
You're dropping off your monies. But do it right. Do it right.
It's just there's no production car that's going to be a great start.
No, it's not. And even when they used to do the production Jeeps back, they would still back half the back of the frame.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's
Even
a huge
Class 7
mod.
still back half,
Yeah,
right?
that's
You know?
that's beyond your DIY.
I like
guy.
Class 7. You can have it from the stock frame from like the driver, from the bulkhead to,
Yeah.
that's
fine.
You back half it, you front half it, you do whatever.
And I tell you, over the years, I've been in a lot of Jeeps with that setup. Maybe it's just coilover and bumps. Coilover and bypass is even better. But they work great. You can haul ass with those things. And you can crawl up all kinds of different things. Right?
Yeah, the way that the King of the Hammers type courses have evolved, it's really weird to see. It's almost like a trophy truck combined with a rock crawler.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you would have told me
Nowadays.
15 years
Yeah,
ago,
that was even possible.
if you would have told me 15 years ago that there would be IFS,
When I
Old
first
Ford
saw
cars, I'd
when
be
I
like,
first saw the
"You're
King of the Hammers mixing in the desert racing part of it, and we were working on some of the real early vehicles that were serious rock crawlers at that point, I'm like, there is no way that thing's getting over 30 miles an
yeah,
hour.
and I'm sure now that we mention this,
Yeah.
we'll get comments that say, "Hey, you guys are saying IFS isn't good for crawling, but what about Ultra 4?" Don't put your 4Runner in that class.
Exactly.
Well, do you know why Ultra 4, you know why that crawls and why it works? Because those IFSs are set mid-travel.
Yes.
They're not pegged out like your 4Runner.
And it's
with
not
2 inches of down travel.
It's not your 4Runner.
And you can't compare a center-mounted A-arm car to a
No.
control arm that bolts to the stop.
And plus they have 20 inches plus of wheel travel.
Right.
So their frame doesn't twist 180 degrees and go back to stock.
Exactly.
If you have 20 inches of wheel travel, you're sitting 10 up, 10 down.
Right.
You are going to articulate and you are going to crawl.
Yeah.
But look at those center-mounted A-arm cars. None of those guys are actually crawling. They're blowing through.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
it's a different driving style.
Yeah. They're not slowly articulating through an obstacle.
No, it's an attack mode.
They're at 40 miles an hour hitting boulders.
Yes.
The
So
size of their car.
it's a completely different.
It's not crawling.
Let's just not get into the argument about if they can do it, I can do it.
Right.
If this 4400 car can do it with IFS, I can do it with my 4Runner.
No thanks.
Take another drink.
Exactly. We'll watch you on Chocolate Thunder.
Yeah,
after
take
the race.
another drink or a puff because it ain't happening.
Yeah.
I'll tell
And
you
I don't
what-
care how much you modify a stock chassis. You're not going to do it. You're going to break the frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just won't take it.
It won't take it. It won't take it.
I think those vehicles are so rad. Like watching Casey Curry with his trophy Jeep,
Yeah.
and it's like a class 1 car.
That was up in the running. Kade Rod was right there with all
know.
those guys.
Yeah.
Man.
They're going as fast. I don't know it's fast, but they're like a class 1 car
Basically.
in the desert.
So what is the WFO car? How is that set up?
And that's
Same type of situation.
Same situation, but it's a different weight distribution type deal.
Right. It
And
definitely
that's a single seater forward of the motor or something like that.
It just really stands out when you see those cars on the course. They look different than everything else out there.
That's Raul's car was a UFO car.
The
Too bad
Gomez
that guy
brothers.
rolled. Yeah, he rolled.
They run the WFO cars as well.
It's so interesting like back in the day, trophy truck racing used to be like that. Everyone had their own take
On what worked. Yeah.
And King of the Hammers is in that stage
Yeah.
where there's all kinds of different ideas.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting.
It is interesting.
At a trophy truck race, it's like it's either this guy, this guy, this guy. There's no like
But back in the day, you're talking 80s and 90s. Back in the day, you had 13 inches of wheel travel. You were bragging.
Exactly. Now
You were bragging.
Now they're
about-
at 20.
Oh my
and,
God! Look at Macmillans. They have 13 inches of wheel travel. Oh my God!
on that Cheneth.
Yeah.
On the chin.
And now it's like you're talking 32 inches of wheel travel.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting into the 30-inch wheel travel range. You know what I mean? And
I
it's
just
like,
think the innovation that you see.
again to me, I'm not a professional racer by no means, and I respect all of them. If you got 32 inches of wheel travel and you don't come into first place, I'm going to punch you in the mouth.
Well, no,
Because-
not just
because-
the wheel
because-
travel,
because-
dude. You got to have the
It's like
horsepower.
it's just like a crawler. You put 40s on it, you put a long arm kit on it. You get to the point where the obstacle's no longer fun.
Well, it's
right?
no longer an obstacle.
It's just a bump in the road.
Exactly.
Like back in the day, we used to go to Coral Canyon. Everyone was on 33s, going up the connector on 33s. It's like now it's 40s, 42s, truggies, buggies. You know what I mean? It's like, how is that?
Yeah,
even-
but in racing, anything can happen. I mean, you look at what happened to Kade, that kind of stuff. Where
he was just getting mischievous.
well, cars.
He wanted to get around. He was trying to get
Yeah,
that first
cars
place.
get piled up and all that, and it's like, okay, doesn't matter how much horsepower you have or how big your tires are. Now you've got a situation that you've got to try to get out of.
And let's talk about this real quick. Kade Rod. First qualifying,
Yep.
Finished 10th after getting hung up for over an hour, over an hour.
Hour and a half, I heard.
Yeah. Hour and a half.
I talked to Randy Rod yesterday.
Yeah.
He said hour and a half.
Yeah. Hour and a half he got hung up on.
And he was a single driver, so he's
and there were people driving over his car.
Yeah, he had to winch himself out. No co-driver.
Okay, so let's talk about this. No live valve, and he had the smallest shocks.
Yep.
Kade Rod was running our 3-inch
70 millimeter off the shelf bypass shock.
Yep.
Not off the shelf tune, obviously. I mean, Nathan was out there doing a fair amount of tuning to that thing, but it had a 70 millimeter rear, 70 millimeter bypass front, and 60 millimeter coilovers front and rear.
Yep.
Everything that was on Kade Rod's car that made him qualify in 6 minutes and 42 seconds is on sale in our catalog.
Exactly.
It is.
Everything.
You can actually go to our cart and buy it direct off our cart.
Yeah.
The best advertising ever.
I'm just saying, like he was the most undershocked vehicle that showed up for that race.
And the fastest.
I'm not saying undershocked because he placed way.
Yeah.
Well, the difference is shock tuning.
The shock tuning.
So Nathan, our great shock tuner.
Yep.
He spent. How many times has he gone?
A couple times out there with him.
More than
and
that.
I think
more than
I
that.
think he even did a few tweaks to it.
That
while
the
we were
day,
there for
yeah,
that
he
terrain.
did it during qualifying. He worked on it during.
He went to the Havasu race
And
for like a
looked,
week.
And if you look at Kade Rod's vehicle and how it behaved through some of that heavy stuff,
amazing.
It performed far better than anything.
It's amazing.
It was fast. It was fast. That motor was not fast enough to outperform our catalog shocks.
Yep. And that's what I kept seeing, and I think he even said that when he was on.
Said it was a cloud.
Yeah, he said I threw everything I could at the shocks, and it just sucked it up, and it just kept going, and I basically.
And you can't say that he just is a good driver because he's hitting the same holes that everyone else is hitting.
Right.
I mean, he's a great driver. He knows how to handle that car. Him and that car are united as one when he's in it. But he was the most undershot guy out there.
Yep.
Well, I got a great story about that. Our ex-president, Mr. Robertson,
Right.
Doug Robertson.
What up, Doug?
So when I started at Bilstein, the only reason why I work here is because I wanted to go to off-road races and be involved in the industry. So that's what I did.
That's why we all work here.
I got a job at Bilstein.
63 years ago.
I went to every off-road race for 10 years before I moved on to other things within Bilstein. But anyways, 3-inch shocks. So the 3-inch shocks that you're talking about too small at one time, that's what everybody thought they had to have.
Right.
We went from 2-inch shocks to 2.5, and now we have 3-inch shocks.
Right.
Well, anyways, we were losing a bunch of customers because we didn't have a 3-inch shock. Everybody had to have a 3-inch shock. So I go into Doug's office and I'm like, Doug, we need 3-inch bypass shocks. And he looked at me and he had this like stare where you can talk yourself out of anything you're asking him.
He'd stare right through you.
Stare right through you. And he goes, when people start passing Ivan Stewart with their 3-inch shocks, then we'll start thinking about making 3-inch shocks. Yeah. Because Ivan Stewart ran on a 60 millimeter,
2-inch or 2.5.
60 millimeter single shock per wheel, coilover.
That makes sense.
And look, we've just proved it at KOH again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like obviously.
How many years later?
Yeah. I'm not going to say we proved it because we didn't finish first. Because Kade Rod got. I'm going to venture to say we would have been top 3 if Kade Rod didn't get hung up. To do that in the smallest shock with no live valve, no semi-active ride,
That's a fairly new car too.
Like
second year.
Yeah.
This is just, and I'm not saying we shouldn't give the consumer what they want. If they want 4-inch shocks, we as Bilstein should give it to them. But what we're
You're not going any faster.
What we're telling you is, if you look at Kade Rod's run, you don't need them.
Yeah, you're not going any faster.
And hopefully Kade Rod has 4-inch shocks next year because imagine that.
Yeah.
Like what he said, man. What did he say in his interview? He's like, for all the guys that finished before me, watch out.
coming at you next race.
So let's wrap this up. Here's the message. If you want to do it right and you want coilovers and bypasses on a trail rig, go to Jimmy's 4x4.
Exactly. You mean just might as well start with
if you got a Jeep or a JT, JLJK, just get some good shots.
Or better yet, if you're going to do a double throwdown kit and you're going to do...
Why do you keep calling it double throwdown?
That's his
coilover word.
Okay. If you're going to do coilover bypass bump stop.
Yeah.
and you're going to convert to coilover rear, don't start with a Rubicon. Yeah, do us a favor. Get a Sport. Like, come on, Sport. Do the right thing. And especially if you're going to swap into 60s or you know, a Dynatrac Ultimate 80, don't buy a Rubicon.
Yeah, we've
talk to your financial advisor and get some.
Why?
If you're gonna put 8112s on your vehicle, don't get a TRD Pro.
And we've talked about this before. Yeah, pick the right vehicle to start with.
You can always get the Rubicon sticker afterwards.
Yeah, get the decal.
Yeah.
And what's the best hot tip if you're building the JK and you're gonna do double or coilover bypass?
Double throwdown. You almost said it.
Almost.
I didn't say it.
Yeah,
but you almost did.
I'm not gonna. What's the hot tip? Come on, you always say it. What's the hot tip if you're gonna build a JK? Really build a JK. What do you start off with?
Go to Copart and buy a salvage Jeep. Or start with a two-wheel drive.
Two-wheel drive.
Yeah, there you go.
From 07 to 09, Jeep did a two-wheel drive. You can hang a transfer case on it. Everything's there. You're gonna throw all this stuff away. If you're gonna start a full project with 80s or 70s or 60s, and you're gonna do a long arm kit, and you're gonna do big acts, big shocks and stuff, go to Copart and buy a Jeep that's compromised, because you're gonna pull all those parts off
anyway.
anyway.
Gonna cut it up and throw everything.
Go get a Jeep that has suspension damage.
Don't go buy a brand new car and do this.
Exactly.
And we're only saying this because we love you guys.
Yeah.
And we don't want you guys to waste your money. And if you do want to waste it, take us out to dinner or something.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I mean, you mentioned food. Now we have to really start thinking about lunch, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Garrett keeps flashing the thing that we're going too long.
Yeah, and so we can wrap it up right now.
Well, to be continued.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm sure we're going to have to answer some comments in here that 5th generation 4Runners are like Ultra 4 cars.
Well, Junior's going to take us out today. What wonderful words do you have for us to close with today, Junior?
Travel safe. It's wintertime.
Okay.
Do your due diligence. Make sure you got good tires. Make sure they're aired up correctly. Make sure you have a first aid kit in your car.
Another winter tip.
And a donut.
A donut, yeah.
Another winter tip, watch out for mag chloride. Maybe drive your winter beater when they put the mag chloride down.
Yeah, don't ruin your brand new car.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us here on podcast. Leave us some comments down there in the comment section if you want to talk to us, and we'll see you next time.
Even if they're not positive.